Hello and welcome to the Fat Dad Fishing Show. My name is Rich Natoli, your regular host of this show. Tonight we're going to have Khoa and Nguyen on, and we're going to talk, of course, about Sheepshead. 'Tis the season for sheep and sheep herding all in New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, up into New York, all over really the East Coast. So we're going to talk Sheepshead, but we're also going to talk a little bit more than just that with Khoa tonight. This is going to be a good one for people to jump in with questions. If you are not familiar with Khoa, I don't know where the hell you've been, but he is host of Tide Chasers podcast. And he's done a lot of the Sheepshead seminars at the fishing shows up and down the coast. So if you want to learn anything about Sheepshead, make sure you get into the chat. I'm going to do my best to keep an eye on that and pass those questions along. You'll know I'm not paying attention when I have the glasses off. I won't be able to see the chat, but when they go on, I'm actively looking for questions. Before we jump into that, and we're going to jump in real quick, want to go through the sponsors. Great Bay Outfitters on Radio Road in Tuckerton is our primary sponsor. Best kayak shop that you're going to find in the entire area. And not only do they have awesome boats, Old Town, and then you've got Native and a whole bunch of others. There's consignment kayaks that Paul has in the shop right now that are also awesome. I'm considering going in there and trying to get one soon. It also does rentals, and he has all the equipment that you need, not just for the kayaks, but also for fishing. So make sure that if you're in the Great Bay area in Tuckerton, swing by, say hello to Paul and the guys in the shop. You will not be disappointed. Support that local business. And the other business that is sponsoring this podcast at this point is me as a real estate agent in southeastern Pennsylvania. If you or somebody you know are looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate in southeastern Pennsylvania, give me a call, give me an email, text, whatever you need to do. You can find me at natolirealestate@gmail.com or richardnatoli.com if you want to go through the website. My phone number is also out there if you just want to shoot a text. That's typically how most people are reaching out nowadays. So with that said, I'm going to bring Khoa on right now. Khoa, welcome back to the stream. It's great to see you.
Always, Rich, always. And it's always a different feeling being on the other side of the mic.
I know. When I was back on Tide Chasers a little while ago, I was so excited because I was like, this is a no stress fishing conversation because I don't have to worry if the tech works. I don't have to do any editing after. I don't have to upload. And yeah, so now you get to feel it tonight, and I'll take care of all the heavy lifting for us.
Perfect. Like it's always the same thing with both our podcasts. You know, it's just we love to talk fishing, and that's how we always kind of keep it that way. You know, it makes it fun.
Yeah, exactly. And it's been a while since you've been on. And again, this was gone for about a year.
Yeah.
So there wasn't really much opportunity to bring you back on. But I will tell you on my channel, yours are some of the most viewed live streams. And it's because of Sheepshead and what you've done to help people to get on them primarily. You did a seminar once. We just talked about Sheepshead another time. And it's just, the water's getting to the point now where, I mean, people have been catching them for weeks, but people are now going to start targeting, I guess, to get over that early season fluke bug. And then let's start switching over to sheep. So you haven't been out yet, right?
I have not. Adult responsibilities, I call it, has gotten in the way. Running a business is not fun, but you know, I've gotten over that. We're about to hit our little lull in our season for DJing, so I got the boat all maintenance up, fired up, and hopefully get out soon.
That's great. Where are you going to be launching out of this year?
We're going to launch out the same ramp we always launch out. We're going out of Stone Harbor, and
okay.
It's your local. It used to be your local municipal ramp, so you know it.
Yeah, across from where it was Smuggler's Cove.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, and now I don't even know what's there, and I don't even want to look and see what's there because it's not Smuggler's Cove.
No, it's a bunch of houses. That's what it is.
It's disappointing. I'll tell you what, there's really no good spot to go on 7 Mile Island for anything fishing related. I think they still have, what is it? Is it Moran? And it's not Moran's. Whatever. What's it called up around? It was past.
In Avalon?
In Avalon. It's the one on the water. It's still there. But they care more about sandwiches for guys on boats than they do actual bait.
Yeah. But I mean, they have whatever they have the minor stuff that you need, and then also my buddy Mike from Never Enough Fishing Charters are there too. So both their boats are there, so it's convenient.
Convenient. It's not the same as
No,
Hodge was good.
yeah, I remember Smuggler's Cove because that's where I weighted my very first double digit with Captain Dan.
Did you?
Yeah, that's me and Johnny. We both weighed our double digit there, official weigh-ins.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can't tell you how much time I spent in that shop growing up. That's where we got gas for the boat for all those years. Weighed everything in. My uncle worked there for quite a while.
Yeah,
A lot of the decorations inside were from my family, including a mahi that was up on the wall, and some of the stuff with sharks. Those were loaned from my family over to Lou
yeah,
when he was alive. But I miss those local shops, and that's to go back to the sponsor. That's why I just love Paul and Great Bay Outfitters.
yeah,
It's not a national chain like Dick's and Amazon and all that stuff. It's supporting somebody local that's been supporting us.
exactly.
Yeah, I'm seeing in the chat it is Moran's Dockside.
Yeah,
Yeah, and Moran's, look, it's they could be so much more than they are. And I don't know, me. Hopefully, there's no one from Moran's that's going to get pissed at me, but they could be so much more than they are. They just switched to sandwiches, like that's their big thing, and it's great. But we need somebody that's going to be like the local place where you want to jump in and you want to talk fishing, and that's gone. It's totally gone from 7 Mile Island.
yeah. Anything near there, like the closest, what we got, like Boulevard Bait and Tackle, right? But they're further up inland. Peace Tokens further inland.
Oh yeah,
Well, yeah, Hands Two and stuff. They're down in Cape May, and then like you got Fanatics, but they're in Ocean City.
right. Yeah, you have to go into Wildwood.
Yeah,
You
gotta
can
go to
go
Wildwood.
to No Bones.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good place to go in and talk. It's not big though. It doesn't
No,
have a ton
no,
of
no.
stuff. And I'm waiting to see what Grassy Sound Marina does.
Yeah, I hope so.
They have
That new
another
fishing
opportunity.
that new fishing pier is amazing looking.
So I haven't seen it in person yet. I'm hoping to see it in person on Wednesday. Not that I'm going to be on it, but I'm going to be passing by, I hope.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to be interesting. They're going to have, apparently, and I haven't seen any details, but they're apparently having their fluke tournament this year on, I think it's the 28th.
Interesting.
So that's what they said, save the
Yeah.
date, and then nothing else came out. So anyone that wants to fish that, I'm going to be fishing that if it's actually going on. Would love to get on the water with people. Look, I don't need to jump on the boat with people. I'm not asking for a ride. I'm just saying I'm going to be there in a kayak, but it would be great to meet up with people afterwards at the awards, whether we're winning or not.
Yeah.
And if you're kayak fishing, let me know because I want to go out and fish with a bunch of people. As of right now, I don't have anyone to fish with. So I'm going to be fishing solo. So reach out if anyone's interested. But let's start talking because in that area there are bridges.
Mm-hmm.
There are good bridges in 7 Mile Island area south. And I will say that I'm going to just make the statement that not all, but the vast majority of the bridges that are not right on inlets are pretty good for Sheepshead in New Jersey. So let's start off. Is this when you would tell people, yeah, it's time to start really focusing on Sheepshead, or do you still think with the water temperatures we're a little out from it?
No, I think it's about time. It's about time. The temps are just right. The black drum already came through, and like I always said, when the black drums roll through, you keep an eye on that because once they make their showing, it's time that the Sheepshead tend to follow along.
Yeah,
and not saying that we haven't seen them even in April. Like we've got guys that dive the Cape May jetties, right? They dive the Cape May jetties, and I get reports back. There's walls and walls of sheep out there, hundreds of them, but they feel like they're in space. They're just sitting there hovering, and you could pitch crabs to them for like days, and they will not eat. They're just staging to come in.
right.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's, I've heard that about some of these inlets and the divers. I wonder if, and they're not hiding behind the rocks either.
Mm-mm. They're exposed. Like I said, it's like they're floating in space. They're literally just suspended, just hanging out. They're not really
just face into the current.
Just facing to the current, just hanging until they feel like and it's like a flip of a switch. They all start moving in a big mass. I had one of my spear fishermen that does the Manasquan Inlet. And he says mid-July he dove was looking for fluke and stuff, and he saw a massive school, about 60, 70 fish
Yeah.
between the jacks, and then they pushed out and started moving up the beach.
Okay. Well, hey, are we starting to see a lot of them being caught offshore and the nearshore wrecks
Rex,
too?
yeah, yeah,
So along with some redfish out there too. So it's definitely I don't know, man. I think the population is pretty healthy at this point, despite the people that I see just killing everything that they
yeah,
catch. It seems to still be outpacing those, and maybe it's just that we don't have a lot of people, or maybe it's just that they're growing at such a fast pace in the area that until we get it, to the area or the volume of fluke fishermen,
yeah.
maybe we're okay for a while, but
Right.
be interesting to see some research on that.
Yeah, the science behind it is that sheep's head grow very quickly up until about 17, 18 inches. And that's when they start slowing down. Kind of like tog. Tog, they
Yeah.
grow super quick. And then once they get to a certain size, now it's only like a quarter inch a year, a half inch a year, or something like that. And with research, as much as in my research, more of deals with fishermen and anglers. So everyone in the area, I always get messages and texts, and
Yeah.
and I never disclose information about where they're caught or things, but I get all the good information of where they were caught and things like that. But then we are getting better numbers,
Yeah.
right? The numbers are there. The fish are smaller.
Yes.
Now we're getting a lot of 1 and 2 pounders, which 6, 7, 8 years ago we've never seen them. Like when I fished with Captain Dan Schaefer, if we had a 3 pounder, we'd be like, whoa, that's cool. Now it's like you go out, it's 2 3 pounders everywhere.
Yeah. It's good to see that
Yeah.
there are a lot of small ones coming
Yeah.
in. You'd like to have some of those bigger ones around too.
Mm-hmm.
But and they still are. I mean,
Yeah.
you're still seeing double digits getting pulled up, just not with the frequency that you were having, where you're
Yeah.
pulling out
Yeah.
6 or 7.
Yeah. We go out to say back 2013, 2014. We'll go out in a day. We'll do an easy 8 to 10 double digit fish a day. And then we'll break off just as many big fish. Like
Yeah.
we only broke off big fish. Like, you get the 11 to 12 to 13s, they come up, we get them up all the time. But it's like the 15s, 16s, and 17s that we break off all the time.
Yeah. I don't think I've hooked one of those. Actually, I know I haven't because I haven't broken a line on a sheep yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I've caught some double digit, but I didn't weigh them, but they were definitely double digit. And I keep waiting to hear from somebody who caught one with missing the top end of the tail. The top half of the tail is gone. And
on the fish you caught.
yeah. And I was like, I keep looking anytime there's a picture of Cape May County, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, where's the tail? Somebody has to have caught that thing. But that was a good fight too, despite the fact it didn't have a tail.
Yeah. Yeah. Those sheepshead are hardy. I mean,
Yeah.
they are very hardy. I've seen fish that got shot through with the spear gun, clear right through. They got holes in them, still swimming. I've seen ones that fins bitten off from sharks and things like that.
Yeah.
They're still going.
Well, it's good because they're going to get banged around a lot around those jetties and the pilings on the bridges. So I guess they kind of have to at that point. All right. So we're definitely going to talk sheep, but I want to take a step back and kind of connect to, you had mentioned the drum, and you put in some time on the drum this year, and that's kind of getting towards the end for people at this point. And I want to make it clear. It doesn't mean that there aren't drum to be caught. It just means that this is where people are traditionally shifting off because they've moved out of some of these areas that they're typically in, and you're going to have to go hunting a little bit more for them. But talk a little bit about that. How was your black drum season?
Black drum season was good, and I owe a lot to it to my buddy Johnny. He's been doing this for a very long time, and I've just got recently doing it with him, and it's just fun. Like, it's more of a night of just hanging out, chit chatting. We soak a couple of snot balls out there with rods, and we just sit and just chit chat, and then your rod just doubles over. You'll see the first initial light hit, and then you wait, and then they just grab it and they just take off, and all you hear is your drag screaming.
Are you using circle hooks?
Yeah, we're on circle hooks.
Yeah, and you're anchored.
Yeah, we're anchored up. We're fishing bays. We're not fishing the beach.
Right.
Yeah, we're anchored anywhere 3, 4, maybe 5 ounces of weight, up about maybe 10 inches, dropper loop, nice, and then we just do a nice circle hook. That's all it is.
What depth are you typically looking for, or what structure? Are you looking for the oyster beds or the dead oyster beds in most cases?
Clam beds, oyster
Yeah,
beds, and bays, things like that. And water depth, it's honestly at low tide, this location is probably maybe a foot,
yeah,
and at high tide, maybe max maybe 5, 6.
yeah,
They're in there. They're in there to do their business. So we're just trying to feed them before they do their business. This is a totally different school of black drum. That's not like the Delaware Bay black drum. When they're in when they're in the Delaware Bay, that's a whole nother school. This is like that early push of black drum that no one looks for. The last 2 weeks of March, the first 2 weeks of May, something like that. Everyone's just kind of looking for stripers or things like that. And
yeah,
we're just timing this focus on these black drums.
yeah. And I'll tell you what. So you're in the back bays when you're
Mm-hmm.
doing this, right? So
Yep.
you're going to get a different size fish than
Mm-hmm.
you're going to get out in the Delaware Bay, where you're talking, it's not going to be uncommon to get a 60 to 100 pound fish
No.
in the Delaware Bay. It's a little less common than it used to be, but you could still pull out 100 pound fish from
Yeah.
there. But you're using essentially the same tactics, just in a different area. I mean,
Correct.
you're dropping the same thing. What size circle hook are you using?
We're using big circle, like 8 O's.
Yeah, okay, 8/0,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
with clam bellies on it. Are you
Yeah.
tying them on with floss
Uh, you
or
have to
string?
you have to get fresh
Yeah,
surf clam, which is almost impossible. But we have our sources that we get them. Yeah, and then you do the whole clam, and then you use the thread, wrap it on there really good, keep it nice and tight, and
yeah,
you just chuck it out there as far as you can go. Uh, the most important detail of this is you have to consistently change bait.
yeah,
Like 10, 15 minutes. If you don't get a hit, you don't get a bite, switch the bait up, do it again, and just keep doing it. So we're coming out with like a half bushel sometimes just to soak it, because once the flavor of that clam washes out, it's useless.
right. Well, it's not useless if you want dogfish.
Yeah, you want dogfish, skate, or any of or the crabs and eel, especially the eels.
Yeah,
They start bothering the heck out of it.
I can't stand it when I hook an eel. So are you doing? So you're only bringing a half a bushel though. So you're not chumming at the same time, or
No,
chumming.
we're not chumming. No, definitely not.
Okay, so that's
Yeah,
different than the way that I did it.
yeah.
I've always done it where in a kayak when I did it, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sitting there and it's difficult in a kayak because you want to fish off the front, but you can't
Yeah,
because of the way the current's going. So I'm just sitting there with the rod in my hand. The line is behind me and not far behind. I just kind of,
yeah.
pitch it over my shoulder. It goes back
Mm-hmm.
maybe 20 yards. And then I'm sitting there with the clams in the front. I got my drive up, so I got room, and I'm just popping the top and I'm just tossing them up
Yeah,
current and
yeah.
letting them drift back and sink underneath me. So they sink within a couple yards.
Right. Well,
Uh,
that's from a kayak and a boat, right? So we're doing it from shore. So there's
yeah.
no, yeah there. If I was doing it from the boat, I'm 100% throwing a clam chum log down, letting it sit, let it just drift back.
Yeah, I saw some of the pictures and I was like, I know where that is. That's exactly where I would be if I was targeting these things right now. I mean, there are just certain spots that they're going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're not secrets. It's not like some secret bite like speckled trout
No.
has turned into in South Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but man, it's and we got this push now, but we're going to get another. Well, you're going to get the red drum pushing in
Yeah.
after, but at
Yeah.
this point, it's still the black drum, and they're still going to be there. Um, I have to ask you this because I've heard various opinions on it,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't agree with the vast majority of them. Most people say it's a terrible fight. What's your thought?
Not at all. Not
Yeah,
at all. Now we're talking like if you get a black drum in like 20, 30 feet of water deep wise, yeah, it may be. But we're talking about any species now in shallow water, striped bass especially, sheepshead, anything in shallow water, they can't go down. They're gonna have to go
right,
sideways, and they will, like, literally a black drum, once they hit your rod and they're peeling offline already. You haven't even locked up your drag yet on that circle hook, and they're already ripping off 100 yards, 150 yards of line.
right.
And then once you lock that drag, your rod doubles over. you know.
Yeah, I
So
never understood the whole they don't fight. Like I've heard people compare them to sand tigers.
no,
Sand tigers really don't fight. They just have power and they move.
yeah,
Drum actually fight. You
yeah,
know, I
they
mean,
do.
they're like aggressive and vicious. You know, they have a lot of, it's not going to be like the quick runs that you get out of
Hmm.
other species, but when they start digging, they're
Yeah,
pulling that line and they're just
yeah.
going to keep going. And I think that's something that I do want to mention. I'll tell you right now, my grandfather caught a 76 pounder. I think he caught it on 10-pound test in the Delaware Bay. This is a very, very long time ago, but it took him 2.5 hours in 10 feet of water to get it up. And it's because it just kept running and running and running. And he kept it. In retrospect, he probably shouldn't have,
Yeah.
because, you know, it's not the best tasting
It's
of
not the
fish
meat.
at that
The
size.
meat's super mushy, and then
Yeah.
if you do ever cut one up that big, you'll see the worms come out. They're
Yeah.
really bad.
So we had it and everything. You know, the worms are, you know, they're fine. They cook out and everything.
Yeah,
But
they do.
the big reason he actually kept it was because it was a potential record
Hmm.
for the line class, and he missed it by, I think, 3 ounces.
Wow.
So 76 or 78 pounds or something like that. And he just missed it. Now it's not even close to what the record is.
Yeah.
But yeah, 2.5 hours and 10 feet of water of a
Crazy.
fight. And I am forever disappointed that I was not on the boat when that fish was caught. They left me behind. They
Yeah.
left me behind.
I couldn't imagine what a 70 is. Like the one I had, the one that's on the cover of the magazine, that one was only like 40,
Yeah.
maybe 40, pushing 40. And I was already hurting my back lifting it up, honestly.
Yeah.
It was just like, if you've ever held one, there's just so much, it's not fat, it's all muscle.
Yep.
Like when I picked it up, it flexed on me, and then like it was so hard just to straighten it out, just to
Yeah.
get a photo.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, they're just pure power, and when
Hmm.
they start moving and, you know, along that bottom, that's why that's why you like the shallow water, because
Yeah.
once they get going, it's like a redfish. It's just pure power with no up and down. It's
Yeah.
just going to go where it's going to go, and it's just going to rip.
It's like hooking into a train. You literally hook
Yeah,
into a train. It just goes. I mean, I'm fishing my surf machine, a Century surf machine, and that's a rod built for big giant tarpon and stuff. And it was doubling that rod over.
yeah.
So,
And you got the gear, you got the rods to handle it. So
oh yeah, I mean, I beat the crap out of our gear because that's my job. So
right,
yeah,
right.
yeah. So I mean, I locked the drag as much as I could because I wanted to know, like I wanted to know full power. And
Yeah.
yeah, it could have literally dragged me in if I would have locked the drag fully all the way down.
Well, that would have been hilarious. If you're ever going to do that, let me know so I can video it. People would love to see you going in the water.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I get a lot
I
of
mean,
views out of that.
I mean, we get Paul, our buddy Paul. He said his dream is to get towed around by one, and I told him, I was like, dude,
That's easy.
your shop's in that area. You need to
Yeah,
you
that's
need to do
that's
it. You know?
easy. He can do that. If Paul really wanted to get towed around, he would be towed around by
Yeah,
now.
he just needs a good 40-pounder, and it will take him from here to like out the inlet or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. I was back behind Stone Harbor a couple of years ago, and I caught a brown shark,
Hmm.
and I was in such shallow water. I caught it in a little hole. The hole was probably the size of the hood of a car. Like, so it was a really small hole, and it went down to like 4 feet. So I dropped my line in there. I'm fishing for fluke, so I have fluke gear on, and this thing grabs it and just starts taking off. And on the sides, it was only about a foot deep, and I had to pull up my drive and I had to pull up my rudder because it was pulling me across this flat. I was like, oh my God, it's literally going to beach me, and it's going to barely make it over itself. And luckily I just kept it out there, and it pulled me through the shallows over. I was scraping bottom. It pulled me over that and
Mm.
into the channel on the other side. So I was able to get out, but that was probably a 40-pound shark. It wasn't big. But yeah, Paul should be able to get towed around. He's just got to spend his time on this black drum,
Right?
you know? All right. Well, let's jump into Sheepshead. So
Yeah,
guys,
100%.
the questions that you have, start putting them in. The first one that we had was the one that you would certainly expect. And I'm going to throw it up on the screen for the viewers, and I will read it for those that are listening. And the first thing is, where is it? Top 3 baits from James Flynn. What are the top 3 baits that you're going to recommend for somebody targeting sheep? And then I'll give mine.
All right, top three baits. You want them in first to least, I guess. Yeah, let's do
Sure.
it. So my favorite top bait is going to be fiddlers, 100% locally caught fiddlers. I know a lot of the shops, Tight Line, CI, those guys have been flying in fiddlers, but I think they're Virginia fiddlers. I haven't tried it yet, so I don't know if there's a difference. If the sheep knows there's a difference, but I know that I love catching our local fiddlers. Uh,
Okay.
Bait number two, it's going to be Asian shore crabs. So you're gonna know those are the two top baits that I have on my boat at all times. And if I had a number three, it's going to be sand fleas.
Okay.
But I find that for some reason, every time I've put sand fleas on my boat and we've taken it out and fished, anything above Avalon, I mean not above, I would say since we're doing directional, from Avalon south doesn't work well. But if you go from Avalon north up to say AC, it works wonders.
Really?
Especially like Ocean City, Summers Point. It's like gold over there,
Yeah.
and it catches sheep, it catches tog, it catches everything. If I drop sand fleas on any of my areas, I'm catching tog or I'm catching stripers.
That's interesting. For me, I have sand fleas as my number two, even down there. However, I will tell you, I've been fishing with people who just keep telling me, stop wasting your time with the sand fleas. I'll catch them on there, but they won't. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm just too stupid to realize it's not a good bait and it just works for me.
I mean, I've had it on my boat. We fished it all. We always have it. We fish it, and it seems like it just doesn't work. But I've been on guys' boats that fish north, and we've caught on sand fleas.
Okay.
And the one guy we know, 609 Fishing, he
Yep.
loves using sand fleas for sheep, and he does really well on them.
Yeah.
So
I really like them. The problem I have with them is they come off so easy. It's so easy to rip them apart. It's like shrimp. Almost.
yeah, it's a one hit wonder. You know what I mean?
So
Even
you
if
better
the
be
sheep,
on.
yeah, even if the sheep just it pops at once, it's coming off.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the way that I hook it, I kind of nestle it under the shank of the hook so that it's kind of protected a little bit. So
Yeah.
in order to get it, they actually have to bite the whole hook. However, if they just nudge it, it's going to pop and swing out, and then they can grab it. But I actually put mine, I put the Asian shore crabs first. Maybe it's because I feel like a fool trying to catch fiddler crabs on the side. So
I mean,
feel like an idiot.
Don't get me wrong though. Asian shore crabs were on my number one for a while.
Okay.
And then I started using fiddlers more, and then comparison between me and my guys on the boat, we keep switching back and forth. Fiddlers out caught Asian shore crabs.
Okay. So I very rarely use fiddlers because, and this is part of, there was no place to buy them when I was fishing.
Yeah.
And you then have to catch them, which means if you're coming down from Pennsylvania like I am, I have a limited time. I'm down and back in one day, and I get to the water. If it's not the right tide, there's no fiddlers.
Yeah.
But there's always Asian shore crabs if you know where to look.
Exactly.
So I'll pull some of those out. Sand fleas, you can get at any tackle shop. So I would get sand fleas. And then the last one is shrimp.
Yeah.
Shrimp is now, but that's the worst one because that will pick up everything.
All those non-species you don't want, interference fishes, don't want it. Yep.
Yeah, I catch a whole bunch of crap on those, but I've caught some nice sheepshead on those as well. You know what it really does? It kind of eliminates fishing the bottom of that column. Yeah. Because once you get to the bottom, maybe third or 25% of those columns on bridges, if you're fishing a bridge, you're into everything, including the sea bass. And then you're just done.
Yeah, you got the sea bass, you got the oyster crackers down there.
Yeah. Oh, I hate those things. They're the worst. They're the absolute worst. Although I did see 609, speaking of 609, where he was out trying to target them and he was catching. I think he ate them.
I've seen people eat them, honestly. So it's I've seen a guy have a whole bucket of them. I was like, dude, you can keep every single one. I don't care.
They're probably good.
You know how they pop, they cook, they get them. What they do it just like a blowfish. They cut the head and they peel it and they pop it off. It looks like a drumstick.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the other thing, I'm going to be collecting some sea robins this year. I'm definitely going to have some sea
robins are always good. Pain in the butt to fillet and things like that, but they are good.
It's worth a try. All right, next question that we have from Frank Locke. Planning on kayaking up some bridge pilings and dropping them on jigs. Is the idea to lower the jig a few feet every minute or so until I get to the bottom?
That's definitely a good question, Frank. And then my answer to that is depending on what your bridge is, and your depth. So let's just say you're fishing a bridge that's 20, 30 feet. Yeah, then you're going to want to work the water column. If you ever seen any of my pictures that I've posted with my graph, you'll see that a lot of the sheepshead are suspended in that middle water column between, if say 30 feet of water, they're sitting between 5 and 25. You don't get many that sits above 5, and you don't get too many that sits below 25. So it's like they're in that middle column. And the only way you're going to dissect that water column is you got to drop slowly and pick out each depth individually. Now, if you're fishing bridges that are, say, 10 to 15 feet, now you're fishing more like recreational docks, like people's houses docks, things like that. Now you're fishing 10 to 15 feet. Now you're literally just pitching it and fishing the bottom, because sheep said that depth's not high. You can't get close enough to them without spooking them. And at the same time, they're going to be sitting on the bottom, pillaging bait and things like that on the bottom.
So when you're fishing, are you starting at the top still? So we talked, it was a couple of years ago, and I'm sure your approach has evolved, right?
Yeah.
You were starting at the top, and you're giving it a minute or two, and then you're dropping and going down, kind of similar to what he said. Is that still, let's say you're 30 feet of water and you don't have a graph, and you don't see them sitting there right next to you. What's your blind approach? Are you going to do that?
My blind approach would be the same thing. I start from the upper column. A lot of times what happens is I always start my days at high tide. I love fishing high tide, or like 2 hours before high tide peak. So I like, that's how I work the water columns, because over the years what I've learned is as the tide gets higher, what happens is the sheeps are higher in the column, and as the tide drops, they sit lower in the column. So that's how I always attack it first. If I'm fishing high tide, I'm fishing higher up in the column. If I'm fishing lower tides, I'm fishing lower on the column.
So let me ask you this, and this is something I experimented with a little bit a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of a specific bridge.
Okay.
And it's not the one that people are thinking about if they know me. You got about 35, 40 feet in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Right? On those pillars.
Yeah.
And as you go out, it gets to about 7 or 8 feet.
Mm-hmm. I know exactly.
Are you fishing those 7 and 8 foot ones as well? Or are you, and I'm not saying, do you ever go over there? I'm asking, like, would you start over there, or would you always go to the deeper pilings?
I usually would start, the way my point of attack I'd start at the deeper pilings and then move to shallower water.
Okay. And does the current have anything to do with which piling you're choosing?
Only for your safety. So incoming, outgoing, you're going to predict it. If you're fishing the outgoing, you're gonna always fish the backside. Remember, when you're fishing, you're always kind of fishing the backside of these pilings, because because they're sitting in that lee where there's no current.
Right.
So no point of you fishing the front, because you're going to struggle with your kayak or whatever it is, and you can't fish it because your bait's
sink yourself.
Yeah, you sink yourself, and your bait's gonna be swinging everywhere. You can't control it. So you're fishing the backside of these pilings where there's no current or anything that's going to. Because remember, we're fishing really light jigs. No. If you can get quarter ounce, 3/8 max, I ever fish is half an ounce. I won't fish anything heavier than half. And you got to be able to suspend that jig halfway, at least straight vertical line as much as possible.
Yeah. So I the reason I ask is because you've done 1,000 times more sheepshead fishing than I have. I've had success though when I've done it, and I went to the shallow side first. And the only reason I did was because there were people on all of the other pilings, and there was no one over there. So I'm just drifting for fluke, and it's getting to the end of the tide. Everything's stopping. I'm like, look, it's not going to be great for fluke for the next hour and a half, 2 hours. I'm going to go for sheep. So I pulled out the sand fleas, and I just pulled up on the ones that were available, and they had more current. As it stopped, because it was shallower water, it was flowing through there better. And what I found was and this is where you're going to know that it's not the same bridge that you think.
Okay.
It was the water's coming. I think it was. Yeah, it was definitely outgoing because I was on the other side of the bridge. The water's coming through, but it was two pilings.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually ducked in behind the front one, in between the pilings. You know, you had the front piling, and then you had that gap, and then you had the rear
Mm-hmm.
piling.
Yep.
That's where I started slamming them.
Right in the middle, right between the
Right
pilot.
in the middle one. And then I went to the back and I didn't have anything. They were all hanging in that middle with the biggest current break from that steadier current. And I think it was about 8 feet of water.
Right,
At the
because
most it was maybe 10 or 12.
you got to remember, as that current's coming in, it's pushing bait over, right? So it's going to hit that first piling and split the bait. So
Yeah.
in between those two piling, that's the most ideal spot for them to fish because they're going to get first shots at all the good bait that comes around. Now, if they position themselves on the back piling, the fish in the front piling in the middle section are going to get better shots at bait, and they won't get it in the back. So that's why you might have seen them more in between the two first piling than the back side of the second piling.
Right. Okay. All right. It makes sense. And that I also would say is the opposite of what I would do for fluke. If
Mm-hmm.
I'm fishing a bridge for fluke and I'm fishing that eddy behind the pilings, like I tell people, fish bridges. And I need to be more clear on that for fluke. Don't fish the piling like you do for sheepshead. Don't get uptight like that because the fluke don't care as much about that current. They're okay to turn broadside in a current because broadside is still flat, right?
Yeah.
There's no vertical.
No.
There's no vertical on these fish. So you head towards the back of these eddies where everything's stirring, but it's different when you're talking about sheepshead because they're targeting things that are attracted to the structure.
Mm-hmm.
So it's primarily the crabs and the mussels and the barnacles. They're not moving no matter what. So they're looking for the current break there. So it makes sense. I was just wondering, the reason I asked, as I mentioned, was because of the depth, because there
Mm-hmm.
was almost no depth there. I had one drop, I would drop it 5 feet and then all I had to do was dip my hand and dip my arm. And now I'm on the bottom.
Right.
Right. So I wasn't working a column more than just moving my arm up and down, but I did well. I mean, I was pulling out. I don't think I caught double digit size in there that day,
Mm-hmm.
but I think I caught off of that one probably 5 or 6. And they were probably the biggest one was maybe 7 pounds, 6, 7, maybe 8 pounds.
It's still a good, respectable fish. 6 to 8 pound fish are really nice fish.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Didn't catch a small one.
yeah, and
Actually, I've only caught one that was considered really little.
yeah, I would never underestimate depth in any kind for sheepshead because, and Paul knows this too. There's spots around him that have literally only 2 feet, 3 feet of water, but has bulkheads sticking out of it.
Yeah.
You may know the area too. So
Yep.
and it comes right off of shore, and there are sheeps in there. Like the funny thing is that pilings they come 2-3 feet, but what me and Paul have discovered is the sheeps aren't up there; they're on the ledge that leads up to it. So it's like 5 feet, and then there's a ledge that like an edge that goes up, and then where it goes to 2-3 feet where the pilings are, the sheeps were sitting on that bottom ledge of 5 feet looking up. So what me and him would do was we would pitch up to the 2-3 feet area, drag it off the ledge, and they would hit it every time it came down that ledge.
Yeah. Hmm. I got to go sheepshead fishing now. Jesus. I'm
Yeah,
hoping to hit the water on Wednesday.
yeah,
So we'll see.
it's a very funky spot. I'm looking through the comments and see Joshua asked, "Have we found any sheeps on sod banks?" 100%.
Yeah. So I was going to bring that one up.
Yep.
Yeah. Josh Pearson asked that. So let's talk about that because um, that's, I think, one of the most underrated spots to look for sheepshead. And
Mm-hmm.
actually, that's where I fish for them first
Yeah, and
because I don't
it,
like bridges. I
It
don't
would,
like
it
being,
would have been fun if we would have bought 609 on here because that's his specialty. He's has
yeah.
that so dialed in. Like I'm okay with it. I don't do it a lot, but I know 609 does it a lot, and he's got it pretty much dialed in superbly. I do it once in a while when I'm bored, but
Yeah.
but it's a good fishery. But there for me, it's always been a time of year that it happens.
Huh. I like it mainly because I don't like going up against bridges.
Mm-hmm.
Um, part of it is a safety thing. I don't like the amount of work that I have to put in on a kayak to stay in an eddy.
Yeah.
And some of these bridges are just ripping currents. So
Yeah.
the second that you hook a fish, it's great because it's on a kayak. You do it on a boat too, but a kayak, it's much quicker.
Yeah.
All you have to do is backpedal once and
Mhm.
just let some part of your kayak hit that current seam, and it's going to spin you.
Yeah.
And as you spin, it's going to pull that fish away from the
Yeah.
structure and around. Unless you're behind an icebreaker or something like
Yeah.
that. But I don't like it. I just don't like it. And they're so crowded. They're
Yeah.
so crowded with other kayakers.
Yeah.
So I prefer to fish for fluke. And then at those tide changes, I'll hit those sod banks. And so what are the characteristics? Because you could say sod banks, but
Yeah.
that's like 99% of the waterways in Cape May County, but 99.9% of those are not going to hold sheep.
No.
So what would you be looking for if you're out there fishing and you had to fish a sod bank for sheepshead?
So what I look for in sod banks for sheepshead is I'm looking for sod banks that are close to inlets. I'm looking for sod banks that you could visually see that chunks of sod bank have broken off.
Yep.
That's a telltale sign. Or if you've ever been fluking through that area and you've actually pulled up dead giant oyster bed chunks by accident, right? That's a good telltale sign that's a good spot to focus on. So what I usually do is I'll come up these thoroughfares. I have side imaging on my Hummingbird. So what I do is I go up current and I sit back and then I just let the boat drift back. So I watch my side scans. So my side scan shows up chunks of side bank every time I pass by it. So what I do is I mark it visually and I mark it on my side scans. After I figured out every chunk that broke off, what I do is I go back up current and then I get to the whatever side bank I like better. Depth wise, I'm looking anywhere between 5 to 15 feet. And
Okay.
I'm going to drift that side bank. I'm going to use my trolling motor, very slow speed, kind of drift backwards. Just let the current take me backwards like it's natural. And I'll be on the bow of the boat. So I'll flip out my jig, 1/4 ounce, 3/8, whatever the lightest I can get away with a fiddler on their Asian shore crab. And I'm just bouncing it, just like fishing for fluke. Nice little hops. You know what I mean? So I'm just hopping and I'm waiting for something to grab it, which usually doesn't happen until you pass that chunk of side bank.
Right. And then how many fluke are you catching as bycatch? Because those crabs are great fluke bait.
I've caught little ones by it, all the time, but I've never caught them big. But like you'll know because you have them marked, and you visually you know which part of that side bank broke off. So when you get to that spot, you're hopping it, and then one hop, it's going to come up, it's going to stop. You hit the top of that side bank, and the second hop, it's going to come off that side bank, it's going to drop right behind it. 9 times out of 10, if there's a sheep, he's sitting behind that sod bank.
Yeah.
And sheep on the side banks are more ferocious. There's no nibbling. There's none of that. They try to rip the rod out of your hand. Because you got to remember, they're also fighting every other fish that sits behind it. Stripers are always sitting behind those sod banks for cover for ambushing. There's giant tog always sit behind sod banks chunks. So they're competing with these other fish. So they're going to be try the first one to grab that fiddler that drifts over that sod bank.
Yeah, and I'm looking for similar. When I'm fishing the sod banks, though, I do try to find one that is at the convergence of 2 waterways. So the current break where a creek meets another creek, and you can find a nice eddy there with some fallen sod. That's typically where I'll try it. And there are a bunch of spots. I mean, I could probably name 100 just in Cape May County, but they're not big. They're not big spots. They're maybe, each one maybe 20 feet of fishable area for what I look at. And I've had some success there. I don't know. I like it, but I want to go back to one thing you said. They don't nibble when they're out there.
No, when they're
I'm
out
going to
there,
be honest with
nibble.
you, Khoa. I have never. I remember saying to Ed on the water, I'm like, what the hell is Khoa fish talking about? I'm like, none of these are nibble. Every single one, except for maybe, I shouldn't say every single one now. At the beginning, I went through this incredible run where every single one just slammed it. Now I'm starting to get more
I call them suicidal sheeps. Those are the ones. Those are the ones that don't care. They try to rip the rod out of your hand. You get far and few.
Yeah, I'm trying to do like, what you said, like look for the tick, and,
Hmm.
watch the line and feel the line and all that stuff. And I'm like, there's nothing for me to pay attention to. If as soon as it tries to pull the rod out of the boat, I'm setting the hook, and it's a
Yeah,
sheep. Now I have run into the nibblers now,
yeah.
but at the beginning I was like, Khoa is on crack. He's overthinking this. No,
No,
I've run into the nibblers now.
there's days, you'll be out in the water all day, and it'll be a struggle. You're trying to buy a bite, one or two
Yeah,
bites, things like that, and then there's that short little window, maybe 45 minutes, when they don't care what's in their face, they eat everything. And
yeah.
I've had my buddy, I had Paul, and I had my buddy Lee Wakefield out on a day like this before. We were picking fish maybe one every half hour or something like that, and then this small window opened up, and it was just lights out. Every crab that went down, they didn't care. It was suicidal.
Yeah.
Between Paul and Lee, I didn't fish. I was busy on the trolling motor, just keeping them in their place. Between Paul and Lee, they put 24 fish in less than 45 minutes in the boat.
That's a day.
That's a day. And after that, light switch went off. We couldn't buy another bite the rest of the day.
Now, were they still there,
They were
or did
there.
they leave? Oh,
They
you
were
can still
there.
see them.
I was marking them. They were
Yeah,
there. They just stopped eating. They didn't
it's
move.
insane.
They didn't nothing. They just stopped feeding.
It's insane. What do you think stopped? Do you think they just got done eating, or do you
Yeah,
think
I think it's. I don't know what it is. It's just
was
like
it the tide or anything like
tide
that?
stayed the same. It didn't. We weren't looking at low tide for at least another 2 hours.
Wow.
It just the light switch just went off, and then that was it. And then we rode around, just kept picking at fish here and there. But that window closed, opened up, and so fast. Yeah, literally. See, Paul just said it was like 30 minutes of freaking mayhem. He's like, I if I would have got a rod in the water, we would have been tripled up every time. Like every time a crab went down, they were literally 10 feet right below us. The crab barely
Yeah.
made it 10 feet, and they were just hammering at, trying to rip rods out of everybody by hand. Lee was the bite was so good, he broke out his ultralight rod, and he
Yeah.
was and bait caster, and he was just hooking them on that too.
Yeah. Those are the best days. One of the single best striped bass days I had. We were chunking in the backwaters, and we started off with 4 lines for 2 people, just sitting out with circle hooks. This was way back in the day. And all of a sudden, all 4 go down. We're like, oh my God. So we get them in, we release them. And for some reason, we put the 4 lines back out, and we tried to, and we didn't get to the 4. So as soon as we had the 2 lines out, we're hooked up. This went on for hours. And we're just sitting in a creek in the backwaters, and they're all nice sized fish. And we got to the point where we were so tired that we just sat down and we were like, all right, it's time for lunch. It was probably 10 a.m. So we just sat down, we ate lunch, we just hung out for probably an hour, hour and a half. We're like, well, let's see if there's anything here. So we'd go to toss the lines out and start chunking again. As soon as the lines hit the water, we're doubled up again. And it was insanity. And then nothing. It just stopped. And not only that, they never came back to that spot the rest of the season. Now, this was fall fishing in the backwaters, but
Right.
they never came back. That spot was on fire, never came back. So,
It's always like that.
yeah, and they were still there when they stopped biting, though.
Yeah.
When they did stop biting, we could see them. I mean, our fish finder was lit. It was lit when we left, and they were still sitting there, but it shut off. Now, you did answer this one, but let's bring it up again from Carl Ward. The heaviest jig weight that you'll use, because I have a slightly different answer.
Yeah. Heaviest I'll go is half ounce at most. If I have to use more than half ounce, I'm leaving. I'm going to find another area.
I will go up to 3/4 ounce, and part of it is I can't leave. I'm in a kayak. It could
Yeah.
take me 2 hours to get to
your
where
next
you're
spot,
going in about
which
34 seconds.
which is understandable.
Yeah.
I see another good question by Carl. He said, "What about blue crabs for bait?" I've tried blue crabs. I catch more tog and like trash fish on them, but here's the big but: if you can find shedder
Yeah.
crabs are gold. You get a nice 3.5. I think that's legal size 3.5 inch shedder, right, or something like that. 3 inches where you can buy them
Yeah, it's something like that. I
like
don't, I
that.
don't remember exactly.
Yeah, so if you can get shedder crabs, you get them. You get a few of them. You cut them in half. You cut them in quarters. So you get right down the middle, and cut them in quarters. They release some crazy pheromone off of them, and they're irresistible to sheeps. I don't know what it is. Every time I've had one, it's literally an instant bite. I don't know what it is. It's insane. We could be fishing all day with fiddlers and Asian short crab, but and we'll get a few fish here. But the moment we catch it, we get used to see me and Johnny. We get so happy when we could pluck a shedder off one of the pilings.
Yeah.
I always have a net in my boat, so every time if we see a small crab dangling on we'll pull it up to see if it's a shedder. Because the easy way to tell if it's a shedder, you take it, you flip it up side. If it's an immature female, you'll see the triangle, and it's like it has that dark red kind of blotch. And then on the swimmer fin, you always see a little red ring. That's how you know it's a buster. It's a shedder crab. So those work.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I did commercial crabbing for like 6 or 7 years in the Carolinas. So I literally that's all our eyes always keep an eye out for.
All right, I'm gonna have to. That's a good tip. I'm gonna keep an eye out for that. Here's one. Are you scraping the mussels off the pilings or the barnacles to create chum?
I am not. I know they do it a lot down south, Florida, things like that. The only reason I don't, because I don't know if it's legal to do it here in Jersey, so I don't want to tempt it, because we have a population of oysters that kind of attaches themselves to bridge pilings and things like that. So I mean, if you manually, I would say go to like side banks that has those rib mussels, right? You get a bunch of them, mash them in a bucket, and then you just kind of chum them yourself. I think that would work. It would definitely get a feeding frenzy going.
I've seen people scrape barnacles. You can see the scrape marks. You can see where the sheepshead have started biting it and chewing up the side, and then you see the big scrapes from the things. I don't do it personally.
Me neither.
I don't think you have to.
No, I don't think. I mean, I think it does help. I think it does help.
I think it may help turn the bite on, but I don't know that it necessarily helps attract them.
Yeah. And that same thing you were talking about, the where they've been eaten. A clue that I always give guys and boaters and kayakers: as you're returning home or something from a trip, every time you go through a bridge, look at the pilings, especially at low tide. Because what happens is the tide sinks below the barnacles. You can look, you'll see where sheeps have been feeding. You'll see white blotches in between all these barnacles, barnacle pilings, and things like that. You'll see white blotches, which clearly shows that sheeps had been feeding on that area. So it kind of gives you an idea if the sheeps are on that bridge or not.
Have you ever used barnacles for bait?
I mean, I have not. I have not. I know guys that use them. I haven't.
Yeah, I haven't either. But I know you can buy them in a lot of spots.
I've used sea urchin the past year, because a lot of the bridges I've been around, they've been starting to populate sea urchins on those pilings, and I've been scooping them off the pilings and cutting them up and using them, and they've been pretty damn good.
Okay, I think about that one. I don't know if I want a bunch of sea urchins running around inside the
kayak. Yeah, that's not fun.
No. Here's a question. I don't know if you can answer this, but this is a really, really good question.
I was just looking at that one
from
too.
Testing 95. Tips to keep fiddlers alive for a few days between fishing.
All right. Well, guys, if you're anything like me or Rich and live in PA, and we don't have the privilege of walking out our back docks to collect fiddlers at low tide at 4 a.m. in the morning, what I do is I get a plastic Tupperware, just like a nice flat one or something like that. Take one of your wife's one. What I do is either I buy play sand from Home Depot, right? So I layer up a nice play sand, and then what you do is every time you go fishing, you collect a gallon of the salt water wherever you collect those fiddlers at. So you take that home with you along with your fiddlers. And what you do is you ever go to the aquarium store or pet store, you'll see those little, I guess, dishes that look like, and that you can put water in. So you sink that dish into the sand, so it just barely it sinks, so it's parallel to the sand. And every day you just add like a cup of salt water in there, and you leave your fiddlers in there. They'll be perfect for. I've had them for 3 months in there, no issues.
Really?
And I feed them fish pellets, like pellets that you feed goldfishes. Just toss them in there, and they'll eat that. And the water is for them to just keep themselves hydrated. You don't want to. You don't want them to live in water because they'll die. So you want they have sand to get out of the water and do their thing, and then they have the water to climb into when they need water, hydration, or anything.
Yeah, 3 months. They become my friends by then.
Yeah.
I'd be like, all right, Frank, your turn.
Yeah, I do feel bad. Don't get me wrong. Like I've kept over 150 of them for 3 months. Just just playing around. Don't keep them in that. I mean, if you have a garage, if you're blessed to have a garage, keep them out there. They do after about a month, they do start smelling weird.
Yeah.
But if you want, you could always just change the sand.
I
That's
got a
it.
shed for that. So I could, so, okay. So I'm going to try that because one of the reasons that I don't use fiddlers is I don't always go through what I catch.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So when I do catch them, it's like, all right, I'm only going to get a few because I'm just going to end up letting them go. And then you got to bring them, like, I won't just dump them out in the
Yeah.
middle of the water. I actually bring them back to where I
And,
caught them and let
and
them
seven.
go. And I don't, I don't want to do that, because you went through all the effort. And again, for
Mm-hmm.
me, it's the time. I've lost fishing time to catch these same day. But when I'm down for a week in Brigantine in a couple of weeks, I may as well just do that. And then I can bring them home and I can just
Yeah.
spend some time, catching them one evening before dinner. And then I have it. That's a great tip. So testing 95, thank you for bringing that up. That is something I did not know.
Yep.
But Khoa, if my shed starts to smell because they die in 3 days, I'm going to be texting you.
Yeah. Please do. Please do. The only reason they ever die is if dramatic temperature change, like cold front comes through.
Yeah.
And to battle that, what you do is you get a heat lamp, like one of those reptile heat lamps.
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
hover it over it. Just keeps
All
them
right.
warm.
Well, I mean, even if I keep them in the garage, it's going to stay a pretty consistent
Yeah,
temperature. It's
yeah,
insulated.
yeah. They'll be fine as long as they have that water dish. They'll be perfectly fine.
All right. So I'm definitely going to do that. I will report back to people on how that works. I'm going to be down July 5th for a week in Brigantine. So I'm going to give that a go.
Yeah,
I'm definitely going to give that a go. That's a great, great question. Thank you.
yep.
Um,
Well, just to back that up too, guys. For any guys that have docks, like if you have your own, if you're cool, you have your own slip, your own boat, and docks down the shore. You get those. Ever seen those wooden minnow wooden
yep.
minnow? Yep, the floating
Yeah, the
ones.
old style ones.
Yep. So what you do is you put mesh netting up on the top of it, staple it, and then you throw all the fiddlers in there and you throw it overboard and let it sit. What happens is the fiddler, they have the water when they need it, and when they don't need it, they climb up with the netting and they hang up there
Okay.
and they live for a while.
That's a good idea. That's another good idea. All right. Here's one that I want to ask you about.
Mm-hmm.
From Anglers Anonymous podcast, leader or no leader when you're fishing jigs?
100% fishing leader all the time.
Yeah, me too. Now, are you using a mono leader like I am?
No preference.
No
Mono,
preference.
whatever I have on the boat, mono or fluoro. Fluoro is kind of more abrasion resistance, but like that's
Actually
one.
not.
Yeah, that's one of those things, man. But like I use whatever's available. A lot of times I'll bring a roll of like 20, 25, and then
Yeah.
just kind of keep on there. Honestly, if you're fishing the way I'm fishing, I hardly ever break off.
Yeah.
So
So I use 20-pound mono, and I
yeah.
use mono because it's cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently the research shows that it actually is more abrasion resistant than fluoro.
Mono. I know it stretches a lot better. I wasn't sure about the
It
abrasion resistance.
stretches, but it is more visible in the water column. But
Yeah.
I will say, just like with fluke, I don't think that Sheepshead give a rat's
No,
ass if
they
there's
don't.
a leader in front of them. And I also don't think striped bass care. I there are very few fish I think that really do in our area, in the mid
Yeah,
Atlantic
no,
and Northeast.
no, they
Start
don't.
getting south, yeah, it's
Yeah,
going to
they don't.
matter. But
They honestly don't care. And the only reason we're using thinner diameter, say like 20 pound compared to 30 or 40, is you got to remember you're cutting water column because you got to be able to cut through that water column because that current's going to be ripping through. You want as thin as line diameter as possible.
yeah,
Braid wise, 20 pounds is pretty decent. My buddy Johnny, he's a brave soul. He uses 10 to 15, and
that's what I use.
he's never broken off a fish yet.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, look, you got 10 to 15. I mean, that's plenty to get a 50, 60-pound fish in. 70-pound. I mean, my grandfather caught that 76-pound drum on 10-pound test.
yep.
But you're not going to. I think the leader is the key, and I would not fish for anything around structure without a leader. Not at all. So that's what I would recommend. So we're on the same page with that one. I will mention that Absecon Bay does have shedders.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought they
Also
did.
from Anglers Anonymous. So
Yeah, he's a little far, but for the guys up there, it's close for him. But for any of us, it's a far ride.
yeah, well that would be far from me. Although I would actually almost go by there on the way down, depending on which way I go. Okay. If there are any other questions, make sure you get them in because we're at the hour. I do want to bring up the one question that is in there from Carl Ward. What kind of lid are you putting on the Tupperware for those shedders, or not the shedders, the fiddlers when you have them?
Just the regular lid, whatever lid you have. Just don't make sure it's not clamped down where it's airtight.
Okay.
You want to get a little air in there for them to breathe.
Okay. Would you put holes in it?
You could punch holes in it if you want.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. I just think, look, if you're going to be stupid enough to steal your wife's Tupperware container, first of all, don't do that. That's dangerous.
Yeah, just go buy your own.
You may as well put the holes in it because it's ruined. As soon as you have a dead fiddler in there, it's ruined.
Yeah.
Just get the disposable ones. How big of one are you getting though, and how many are you putting in there?
You ever seen those ones that they store shoes in that roll under your bed? The flat one.
Oh, so the real big ones.
Yeah, I use one of those. Not a giant one, but like something like that.
Well, that's perfect size. It'll fit right in the back of the truck. I can put it right under the kayak. It'll be good.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay.
Another subject I wanted to that I hardly ever cover in like my seminars and things like fishing docks. Like docks, I wanted to touch docks a little bit.
Yeah,
it's kind of a niche where some of the guys further north, but like lately we've been exploring our areas too, and Stone Harbor and things like that. There's a lot of docks around.
Yeah, but let's talk about which docks are best because
not every docks are going to hold sheep.
No, and the vast majority can't.
Yeah.
They just cannot, even if they're old docks, they cannot hold Sheepshead because of their location. So why don't you kind of drill into which docks they should be looking for?
The docks you're looking for specifically are going to, as always, it's going to be near an inlet. It has to be near an inlet. Not saying that they won't go all the way inshore and find docks, and they will, but docks near inlets will always hold sheep. So if you're fishing and where there's no depth, you're talking a lot of docks I'm fishing are probably like 5-10 feet. And when these docks are 5-10 feet, you're not fishing vertical like you are on bridge pilings and sanctions and things like that. If you ever watch any of John Skinner's videos, Fishing Florida, it's pretty much the same basic concept. We're pitching jigs with crabs on them and literally just kind of walking them back to you very slowly. And a lot of times you will feel the sheep pick it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And swimming away with it.
The other thing I'll mention, so when you say close, for them to hold, it has to be like real close to an inlet. Mm-hmm. They will be on other docks.
Yeah.
Further in and close, I would say you want to be less than 2 miles from the inlet to have them really sitting up on these docks.
Yeah.
But you also need some current. So, and an old dock helps because that's what has the growth.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't want the ones that are covered in plastic that have nothing growing on them.
No plastic docks.
But don't go in the back where there's no current. If the water is just flowing into a bay and there's a ton of docks, like where I grew up, that bay is not holding Sheepshead because there's no current. The water just kind of like floods in. The actual current is in the channel, which doesn't come through the bay. It goes alongside the bay. So there's really not a great reason for a Sheepshead to be there. But once you hit the ICW, now you're looking at some decent docks as long as you have a good current break on them.
But I have caught sheeps in the area where you grew up off those docks too.
Yeah, but
and then also don't never overlook markers, channel markers. Yeah. You're not going to get a school of fish off markers, but you're going to pick 1 or 2 fish off markers if they're on the markers. And I have right out launching a boat. I ran out and I sit there. There's a few markers in front of us. It's on the way to my spot, so I'll stop by, hit them real quick. Boom, boom, boom. They're like 7-8 feet. I'll hit them. No fish. Move to the next one. Hit them. I occasionally get lucky and I'll pick 1 or 2 off a marker.
Yeah, I remember the first time I saw you on the water after your first podcast appearance with me. I was like, oh, I wonder if that's Khoa. And you're just gunning right down the channel. I mean, you're flying. And all of a sudden you stopped at a marker. And I forget who I was with. And like, that's Khoa. You fished the marker for about 2 minutes and then you were back to full speed. And next thing I knew that you were pulling up on a dock I think it was either a bridge or a dock near a bridge.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that was you. I don't think you caught anything because you were only there for a couple minutes,
Yeah.
literally. But we're in the kayaks and we were so far away. But what tipped it off was you stopped at the marker.
Yeah, and I tell guys all the time during the seminars, don't focus on one spot too much. Well, for you kayakers, guys, you guys have no choice. You know what I mean? You guys got to pick your spot, and you guys got to stick it out for the rest of the day.
Well, you do,
Depends.
you do, but you don't.
Hmm.
You have to focus on the area,
Yeah,
right? Um, but you don't have to. Like you may pick one bridge and you have that bridge,
yeah,
but I'm not going to mention which one, but you and I were talking about it earlier. You can fish that bridge, and you said it's one of the best areas now.
so
Okay,
far.
you can fish that bridge, but that if you're a kayaker, that's not your only spot
No.
because you do have the sod banks
Right
and you
around
do
there.
have a lot of docks
Yep,
and
in
you have
that
a lot of
area.
current protected seawalls,
And you
right?
are close to an inlet.
You are close to the inlet. So yes, we are limited to an area, but I could hit all of those different features that I just said to you in like I mean effectively hit and fish each of those in less than 2 hours. You know, that's the travel time plus the time fishing each spot and then moving on to the next.
Hmm.
So I don't give the kayak fishermen the out.
No, definitely not.
You got to put in the work. Yes, you're stuck in an area unless you're going to load into the truck and take off or onto the trailer and take off. But you have options and you should have multiple options before you actually hit the water, because if they're not multiple options, it might not be worth going,
Hmm.
at least in that area, you know? So make sure you read those currents and
Yep.
tides and everything ahead of time.
Oh, got this one quick question from Joshua. You see at the bottom, it says, "Do you find
Yep.
sheep stop hitting after you pick one or two off?" No, they don't. They will continue eating. Like I said with Paul and Lee, it was literally 23 fish in 30 minutes, 35 minutes. It doesn't matter if there's a school there and they're in a freedom frenzy, they'll eat everything. There's just there. Also have guys that fished on my boat that will work on one fish for like 10, 15 minutes. I watch the guy because I hold the boat and I watch. I will literally watch my guy drop his jig down with the crab and literally get eaten 6 or 7 times from that same fish because I know it's one fish.
Yeah.
And then that fish will eat that, keep taking his bait. He don't care. And then
Yeah.
we'll finally hook him, put him on the boat, and then just toss him on the other side and drop down there. There's no more fish there. So that confirms that there's just one fish that was literally robbing him. They're as long as you don't sting them, is the way I say it. If you don't hook them in the lip or something and they pop off, they'll
Right.
continue eating. But the moment you sting them with a hook, then they won't feed again.
But the rest of the school will.
The rest of the school will, but that one
Yeah.
fish won't.
Yeah. I've had experiences where striped bass at night in the lights, that one catching one can shut the whole thing down.
Mm-hmm.
It depends. I mean, it doesn't have to though, but I've seen it happen. I haven't experienced that with Sheepshead though. It seems to me that if they're there and they're biting, they'll just continue to bite. They don't care about their buddies that were pulled out. They're not all that tight.
Yeah.
All right, so here's another one, and I'll address this one.
Mm-hmm.
With best option for protecting the sides of a kayak. So I definitely try to protect my kayak from bridges, and that I assume is what's being asked. I use a combination of Gorilla Tape, and I also use Kydex. So I make a Kydex keel guard for the bottom because I'm always, when I beach a kayak, I run full speed right up into the rocks, and just because it's easier. But I need to protect the bottom, so I use a Kydex keel guard. You can use the same exact materials and use the Kydex to shape them for bumpers on your kayak. Just keep in mind, if your side of your kayak, like next to your hip, is hitting a bridge, you are not on that bridge properly. You should never be sideways into a bridge unless you're behind a huge stanchion where the entire width of your kayak, front and back, are inside the eddy. Because otherwise you're just looking at getting tipped as soon as the current grabs you. So, but I use Kydex. And if you're not sure what Kydex is, that's what you use to make holsters. So you can go on. Actually have a video on this channel if you want to look at how to make a Kydex keel guard. It's very easy to do. It's very inexpensive. And quite frankly, I think it's fun. So you can armor it up and you won't have to worry about it. You can grind into the barnacles and The Kydex just does not care, and it won't
Yeah.
come off.
For me, boat wise, I have a fiberglass skiff, so flat skiff. So there's no way protecting it.
No.
I replace my rubber rail every year, brand new rubber rail every year. I buy it by bulk because I know I'm going to trash it. It's
Yeah, I get nervous with fiberglass up on those bridges, man. I don't know how you guys do it. Yeah, I get so
if you ever
nervous.
see me on those bridges, I'm uptight right into the bridges. Like I'll bump the pilings.
Yeah, I've
Uh,
seen you up on those, and
yeah,
it's a
yeah,
little it's a little nerve wracking to
it's all
watch
right.
people up there because every once in a while you hear the crunch,
Yeah, you
and the
get the
crunch is
crunch.
usually the shellfish.
Yeah, usually the shell. Some of the bridges do have those big dangerous bolts that stick out. So
Yes.
you always got to keep an eye on those. That's about it. I know we're about to wrap up pretty soon, but I wanted to hit Austin's question real quick about live
Yep.
scope.
Yep.
All right. Well, I don't have live scope in my boat, but I have some stuff in the works by the end of the season. So hopefully, well, we'll get some stuff together because I'm gonna be working with Hummingberg and Minn Kota. So hopefully we'll get that together and I'll give you. But I know a lot of other guys that use it. I think Scotty uses it on his boat. He has live
I think
scope.
Josh uses it on his.
Maybe
Pearson.
yeah. I'm not sure if he uses it, but I know Scotty uses it on his boat, and it's definitely effective. It lets you work very quickly to find the fish. Like
Yeah.
for me, I have side scan and side imaging on my boat, so I'll usually drive through an area and I can pick off which piling has fish and which one doesn't. But yeah, with live scope, it would be a lot easier because you would pull up, scan the front, you'll know if there's fish sitting on that piling. If not, you move on to the next and move on to the next.
Yeah, and I'll show you. Captain Pearson live scope is a game changer for him. I don't have live scope on my kayak. I just don't spend the money on it. I barely use side scan. I use it for looking for striped bass during the migration because that's how I find the bunker.
Yep.
Otherwise, I very, very rarely use side scan. I pull up blind to a piling and I fish the piling. And that's it.
I do a lot of that. This year, I actually have a underwater drone, which I'm going to be swimming, and then I also have a one of those underwater cameras too that has like a 9-inch screen up top, so I can kind of just drop in looking around. I don't use it for actually finding fish, but I kind of use it just to film behaviors, especially the drone. I swim down and I kind of see I want to see what they're doing, what they're actually moving around, are they suspended, and things like that.
Yeah, I don't use it. I'm not saying I wouldn't. I just don't have several $1,000s sitting on my kayak. So as a matter of fact, I have an old fish finder I need to replace, and I just need to get the money together for that because I think I got it in 2000. It still works, but
between the two of us, we know a good guy that sells really good fish finders.
I know. I gotta go and talk to Paul. I'm reluctant to do it because I know I'm going to end up buying a new freaking kayak from the guy in a few weeks. So my wife is going to get a kayak. So I'm trying to figure out how do I swing getting a new fish finder, but not giving it to her and giving her my old. It's going to be very delicate, Khoa. It's going to be
it's a very delicate process, man.
So, all right. Hey, any last second things that you want to cover?
No, not really. But like I said, I'm always looking for new guys to take out fishing. I don't run charters. I have my captain's license, but I just don't have the time in my busy schedule to actually run charters. But I'm always excited to take out new people to fish, especially if it's something you want to check off your bucket list. Just feel free. I'm a friendly guy. And
so let me ask you this.
Yeah.
You want to go out later this year and not only hit sheep, but also go for the triggerfish?
Yeah, we could do trigger and start beginning of August. I start looking for cobia. I start looking for cobia in August, so we can always run out and hunt for some cobia or something like that.
Let's get together this year.
And then we still got to check off that redfish. You've been doing so much research in areas that hold them. And we're going to find one. We're going to find one together.
So people make fun of me for this, and I don't know if I've mentioned before, you and I are, when we're texting, it's usually about where we just saw a redfish.
Yeah. Or if I see something on my Navionics that looks redfishy, I'd send it to you and be like, look, this looks good. It has grass. It has sides, it has sand, it has an edge. I think it may hold redfish.
Yeah, and I will say there was one time where I was on the water and we're texting. You were up in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
I think you were at work.
Yeah, probably.
And you're texting me. You're like, okay, where are you? And I told you exactly. And I said, I think this looks right. And you were telling me like nudge over to this spot. And I did. And that's where I had a roll on the top water from a redfish.
It's a little spot.
Very clearly a redfish.
It's a spot that has two little islands right next to each other. I always see a redfish tailing in there. Like every time I go by, I'm not looking for him, but I'm going by bass fishing, and I always see one in there with his tail up.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll find one. We got to get Josh Pearson in there too. He's definitely he's going to find one.
Yeah,
he's going to find one.
I gotta hold myself from running up north when the fall run kicks in, because when the mullet run kicks in here, I really have to focus on them, because that's like the most closest we're going to get to catching a redfish is when that mullet run picks up.
Yeah. Well, and there are some spots that I know that they are, again, I'm looking for where they hold, not where they're coming in on a mullet run, right? Because we know those spots. There are several well-known spots that you can still catch them. I'm looking, where are they in July? You know? Yeah. If we can find, and that's where, and we were right. You were right when you said just nudge over to this section, and that was July. That was early July, and one rolled on it. So, well, before we start talking for another 2 hours and people start making fun of me again for talking redfish in New Jersey, we'll move on. Khoa, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. Everyone, thank you for the questions and being active in the chat. We're going to try to be back next week. With a I'm not quite sure what the show is going to be. It's really, really tough time of year to get guests that can come on at a specific time, because most of these captains are on the water until like right before the stream starts, or they're trying to clean the boat, or they're trying to get crabs or bait for the next day. But we're going to get one together for next week. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. Until next week, until next episode, everyone, get out there, get on the water, get some tight lines.